Once upon a time, in a magnificent and colorful kingdom, there lived a young princess named Snow White. She was a vision of beauty, with skin as white as freshly fallen snow, lips as red as the most delicate rose, and hair as dark as polished ebony. But beyond her stunning appearance, she was known for her kind and gentle heart. Snow White had a natural charm that endeared her to all, from the noble courtiers in the grand palace to the woodland creatures that roamed the nearby forests. She would often spend her days wandering through the meadows, singing sweet melodies that seemed to brighten even the gloomiest corners of the land. However, her life was not without sorrow. Her beloved mother, the Queen, passed away when Snow White was still a child, leaving an emptiness in her heart. In time, her father, the king, remarried a woman of breathtaking beauty, but her heart was as cold as ice. Unlike Snow White, who radiated warmth and kindness, the new queen was vain and obsessed with her own reflection. She cared little for the young princess, seeing her not as family, but as a rival. Despite this, Snow White remained pure-hearted and full of life, unaware that her stepmother's jealousy would soon turn into something far more sinister. The once peaceful kingdom was about to be shaken by a dark twist of fate, setting the stage for an unforgettable tale of danger, friendship, and magic. The new queen, though undeniably beautiful, possessed a heart filled with vanity and cruelty. She spent hours each day gazing into her enchanted mirror, entranced by her own reflection. This was no ordinary mirror, it possessed the power to reveal the absolute truth. Each day she would ask in a voice laced with arrogance, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is the fairest of all?" And without fail, the mirror would respond, "You, my queen, are fairest of all." These words filled her with great satisfaction, reinforcing her belief that no one could ever surpass her beauty. For years, the queen basked in this reassurance, ruling the kingdom with an iron grip while Snow White remained in the background, treated more like a servant than a princess. But as time passed, Snow White blossomed into a young woman whose beauty, kindness, and innocence shone brighter than ever before. The people of the kingdom adored her, drawn not only to her physical beauty but also to her gentle soul. Then, one fateful day, the queen once again asked her mirror the familiar question. But this time, the answer was different. "Fairest of all is Snow White now," the mirror declared. The queen's heart burned with fury. How could this be? How could a mere girl surpass her? Enraged and consumed by jealousy, the queen refused to accept this truth. Her obsession with being the most beautiful woman in the land turned into a dangerous thirst for revenge. Blinded by jealousy and rage, the queen could not bear the thought of Snow White surpassing her in beauty. Her mind twisted with dark thoughts, and she resolved to eliminate the young princess once and for all. Summoning her most loyal huntsman, she fixed him with a cold, piercing stare and issued a command that would change Snow White's fate forever. "Take her deep into the forest," the queen ordered, her voice dripping with malice. "Make sure she never returns. And to prove your loyalty, bring me her heart as proof of your deed." The huntsman, though bound by duty, hesitated. He had seen Snow White grow from a child into a kind and innocent young woman. The thought of harming her sent a shiver down his spine. But he dared not defy the queen. Leading Snow White into the thick, shadowy woods, he struggled with his conscience. As she wandered, trusting and unaware, he raised his dagger, his hands trembling. But at the last moment, he faltered. He could not do it. "Run, princess! Run, and never return," he whispered desperately. Snow White, confused but sensing danger, turned and fled into the forest. The trees loomed like monstrous figures, their branches reaching out like claws. She ran blindly, stumbling over roots, her heart pounding with fear. Behind her, the huntsman, determined to deceive the queen, slew a wild boar instead and presented its heart to the queen, hoping she would never discover the truth. Snow White ran through the dark, eerie forest, her heart pounding like a drum. The towering trees cast long, twisted shadows, their gnarled branches reaching out like menacing claws. Strange noises filled the air, rustling leaves, distant howls, and the fluttering of unseen creatures. Every sound sent shivers down her spine. She stumbled over roots, her dress torn by the grasping underbrush, but she kept running, fear driving her forward. At last, exhaustion overcame her, and she collapsed near a small clearing. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in soft hues, she forced herself to stand and continued walking. It was then that she spotted a tiny cottage nestled among the trees, its windows glowing warmly in the early light. Hope flickered in her heart. Curious but cautious, she approached and gently pushed open the wooden door. Inside, everything was small yet perfectly arranged. Tiny chairs lined the table, and little bowls of soup sat untouched. Weary and starving, she took a few hesitant bites before climbing the narrow staircase. There, she found 7 little beds in a neat row. Too exhausted to question further, she pushed 3 of them together, lay down, and drifted into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, the owners of the cottage, the 7 dwarfs, were on their way home after a long day of mining for jewels. As they approached their home, they sensed that something was different, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The 7 dwarfs, Doc, grumpy, happy, sleepy, bashful, sneezy, and dopey, returned home after a long day of mining, their boots heavy with dust and their faces lit with the satisfaction of hard work. As they approached their cozy cottage, something felt off. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, things seemed different. Grumpy furrowed his brow. "Someone's been here," he muttered. They stepped cautiously inside, scanning the room. "Someone's been eating my soup," Grumpy grumbled, pointing at his half-empty bowl. "And someone's been sitting in my chair," Doc exclaimed. One by one, they noticed small disturbances, misplaced furniture, missing bites of food. Confused and alarmed, they climbed the stairs. There, in their bedroom, they found the most astonishing sight. A young woman with porcelain skin, dark flowing hair, and ruby lips lay fast asleep, her peaceful face barely stirring as they gathered around her. The dwarfs exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. At last, Snow White's eyes fluttered open. She gasped, sitting up to see 7 small faces staring at her in curiosity and wonder. Startled but relieved, she explained her plight: the cruel queen, the huntsman's mercy, and her desperate escape through the forest. The dwarfs, moved by her story and her kindness, felt protective of the lost princess. "If you stay with us, you must be careful," Doc warned. "The queen will not give up so easily." Snow White nodded, grateful for their kindness, unaware of the danger still lurking beyond the forest. Back at the grand castle, the wicked queen stood before her enchanted mirror, her heart pulsing with anticipation. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" she asked, her voice laced with vanity. But instead of the answer she longed for, the mirror's response sent a chill down her spine. Though over the hills and far away, where the 7 dwarfs reside, Snow White is still the fairest. The queen's fingers tightened into fists. Her breath quickened as fury surged through her veins. Snow White was alive. The huntsman had betrayed her. Deception had robbed her of her rightful title as the fairest of them all. Her beautiful face contorted with rage. She would not tolerate such defiance. If she wanted Snow White gone, she would have to do it herself. Summoning her dark magic, the queen retreated into the shadows of her secret chamber. There, amidst bubbling cauldrons and flickering candlelight, she concocted a sinister plan. She reached for a glistening red apple and whispered an incantation. A thick, green mist curled around the fruit, infusing it with a deadly curse. One bite would send Snow White into an eternal, death-like slumber. Satisfied, she transformed herself into an old, frail peddler woman. Her regal beauty melted away, replaced by wrinkles and a hunched frame. Cackling to herself, she clutched the poisoned apple and set off toward the dwarf's cottage, ready to claim her victory once and for all. Disguised as an old peddler woman, the wicked queen made her way through the dense forest, clutching the poisoned apple in her withered hands. Her once regal beauty was now hidden beneath a hunched back, a tattered cloak, and a face lined with deep wrinkles. She cackled under her breath, savoring the thought of her victory. The dwarfs might have protected Snow White before, but they were powerless against her cunning plan. At last, she arrived at the quaint little cottage, its windows adorned with flower boxes and its chimney puffing soft curls of smoke. The queen rapped gently on the wooden door, her voice trembling like that of a frail old woman. "Apples, dearie. Sweet, juicy apples for a kind young girl like yourself." Inside, Snow White hesitated. The dwarfs had warned her never to speak to strangers, but the kind-hearted princess could not ignore an elderly woman in need. She unlatched the door and peered outside. The queen smiled warmly, her eyes twinkling with false kindness as she extended the gleaming red apple. "This is no ordinary apple, my child," she cooed. "It is filled with magic-hone bite, and all your dreams will come true." Snow White, enchanted by its beauty, accepted the apple. The moment she took a bite, her vision blurred, and a cold numbness spread through her body. The apple slipped from her fingers as she collapsed to the ground. The queen grinned in triumph. Snow White had finally fallen. The dwarfs returned from their long day of mining, their cheerful songs fading as they neared the cottage. Something felt wrong. The birds that usually chirped around the house were silent, and an eerie stillness hung in the air. As they stepped inside, their eyes widened in horror. Snow White lay motionless on the wooden floor, her delicate hands resting at her sides, her lips slightly parted as if in sleep. The bright red apple, now marred by a single bite, lay beside her. Grumpy knelt down, shaking her gently. "Snow White, wake up," he pleaded, his usual gruffness replaced with desperation. But she did not stir. Happy wiped his eyes, his usual joy nowhere to be found. Doc, the wisest among them, examined her closely, but there was no sign of breath, no movement, no warmth. "She's gone," Bashful whispered, his voice trembling. Sobs filled the small home as the dwarfs huddled around her, their hearts heavy with grief. They could not bear to bury her beneath the cold earth, for even in this death-like sleep, she looked more beautiful than ever. With great care, they built a glass coffin, lining it with flowers, and placed her upon a hill where the sunlight could kiss her face. Day after day, they stood vigil, hoping for a miracle. But Snow White remained still, frozen in time, while far away, the wicked queen rejoiced, believing she was finally the fairest in the land. Days turned into weeks, and the 7 dwarfs remained by Snow White's side, their sorrow unwavering. They took turns keeping watch, ensuring that not even the wind disturbed her peaceful rest. Word of the beautiful maiden in the glass coffin spread far and wide until, one day, a prince from a distant kingdom rode through the forest. He had heard whispers of her beauty, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight before him. Snow White lay as if merely asleep, her skin still fair as snow, her lips as red as a rose. The prince felt an unexplainable sorrow in his heart as he gazed upon her. He turned to the dwarfs and asked, "Who is she?" With heavy hearts, they told him of her kindness, her laughter, and the cruel fate that had befallen her. Moved by their love and the tragic tale, the prince knelt beside her, his eyes filled with admiration. "I cannot bear to leave her here," he murmured. "Allow me to take her to my kingdom, where she will be honored forever." The dwarfs, reluctant yet knowing they could not bring her back, agreed. As the prince leaned down, he placed a gentle kiss upon her lips, a farewell to the maiden who had captured his heart. At that moment, a miracle occurred. Snow White's breath returned, her eyelids fluttered, and her lips parted as if awakening from a deep sleep. The spell had been broken, she was alive. Snow White slowly opened her eyes, her breath steadying as warmth returned to her body. The dwarfs gasped in astonishment, their sorrow instantly transforming into joy. The prince, overcome with emotion, could hardly believe what had happened. Snow White sat up, her gaze meeting his, filled with confusion and wonder. "Where am I?" she asked softly. The dwarfs rushed to her side, their eyes brimming with tears of happiness. "You were under a terrible spell," Doc explained. "But the prince's love has saved you." Snow White touched her lips, realizing what had broken the curse. She looked at the prince, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You have saved me," she whispered, a smile forming on her face. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the wicked queen stood before her magic mirror, expecting to finally hear the answer she had long desired. "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" she asked, a smug smile playing on her lips. But the mirror's response sent a chill down her spine. "The fairest of all is Snow White, who lives and breathes once more." Enraged and horrified, the queen's fury consumed her. Some say she was so overwhelmed with anger that she lost her footing and fell from the castle's highest tower. Others claim she fled into the dark woods, never to be seen again. Regardless, her reign of jealousy had come to an end. Snow White and the prince returned to his kingdom, where they lived happily ever after.